why people should visit Australia in 2025.
If you want to admire some fabulous nature, sporting encounters, to wildlife encounters, to cultural attractions, there's something there for everyone.
We had someone who came to us and said that I've done multiple trips to Australia. Now I want to really take a car and drive to the northernmost tip of Australia. Because if you stand on the northernmost tip of Australia, you can see the sunrise and the sunset because it's just a tip. What are some of the ideas that you would suggest to a second time traveler or a third time traveler that you still feel that the Indian traveler hasn't explored?
So you can hire a car or drive from Brisbane to Sunshine Coast, which is a beautiful area, which I recently discovered a place called Noosa. And there's an experience called as a Great Beach Drive, where you drive on the beach for a stretch of almost 60, 70 kilometers. And there's this unique place called as the Jamala Wildlife Lodge in Canberra, where Sonakshi and I recently went. And we can actually sleep with the lions.
Oh, wow. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. Today, we have someone who's been on the podcast multiple times and he has spoken of Australia with so much passion, with so much love that I guess many people who listen to the podcast often come to me and say that you talk about Australia a lot. But Nishant, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so
Welcome
much.
back, you want to say.
Yeah, welcome back, I would say. You've spoken about Australia many times on Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life, but every time the discussion has kind of been different. It was pre-COVID also, it was post-COVID also. So thank you so much for being such a strong supporter of the podcast and of Veena World. It means a lot to us.
Absolute pleasure, Neil, and to the entire Veena family for all the support over the years. And it's an absolute pleasure to be back on the podcast.
Awesome. So, today's discussion is centered around why people should visit Australia in 2025, right? And I'll circle back to an email that I received from you a couple of weeks ago, where you mentioned that the numbers and how connectivity to Australia has increased, right? Earlier, there used to be about 8 flights to Australia every single week, if I'm not wrong. Now it's 27 flights to Australia from India every week. The number of travelers going to Australia has also gone to more than 450,000 or 450,000, as I would call it. Now, with so many people going, I wanted to start the podcast only with one question. Why do so many people go? What are some of the reasons that these people have to go to Australia?
Yes, there have been a lot of people who have been traveling to Australia from India, and India is one of the fastest growing market for tourism. Australia pre-COVID as well as post-COVID as well. But whenever I meet a lot of people in the advertising world or marketing industry, or even within the friends and family, side of things, not too many people have been to Australia.
Yeah.
And Australia is known to everyone. It's got very high awareness. It's right up there in terms of consideration. But when it comes to visitation, we see that there's not so much of urgency to travel to Australia. And so let me start off with giving you 10 reasons as to why somebody should plan their next trip to Australia.
Oh, let's go. I'm counting.
When we all travel together as a family or a group of friends, and that's how Indians love to travel, right? We take our entire jeng bang, our childhood friends, our parents travel with us, our grandparents travel with us. So this is one destination that offers something for everyone, right? Because it's quite diverse, and right from the Great Barrier Reef in the north of Australia, in the state of Queensland, which is the only underwater wonder of the world.
Yeah.
You have the world's oldest rainforest, which is in the Daintree region, again in Queensland.
Yes.
Everybody thinks that Amazon is the world's oldest rainforest, but that's just a misperception. Daintree is the world's oldest rainforest, so that's worth visiting.
Yeah.
Then Australia is also the adventure capital of the world, and Gold Coast, the city of Gold Coast has got so many theme parks. For young adventure seekers, it's a perfect destination to visit the movie world, the sea world, the wet and wild water park, Dream World, the Q1 climb, something that you can undertake on one of the tallest buildings in southern hemisphere. So Australia is the adventure capital of the world there. So rainforest, the Great Barrier Reef, adventure activities, which is skydiving, bungee jumping, adventure in the sky, adventure on water, adventure on land as well. Then the two icons, the two majestic icons, the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I've been to Australia. I've stopped counting my number of trips.
Would it be more than 50? For sure, right?
Certainly more than 40 trips in my 15 years association with Australia. But whenever I go to Sydney, I have to just go to the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I go there every day in the morning, maybe at dawn or at dusk. And you can never get over that particular view. It's so majestic and so spiritual. Despite the fact that there are hundreds of people there, you feel at absolute peace when you're standing and observing these two icons. So the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, and you can watch a concert at the Opera House as well. Then something which is associated with Australia, which is cricket.
Yeah.
And whether you visit the MCG or the Sydney Cricket Ground or the Adelaide Oval or the Gabba or the Perth Stadium or the Optus Stadium, every single stadium in Australia has got its own character, and I've had the privilege of watching a few games, and we can discuss about that a bit later. But as I said, every single stadium in Australia has got a unique character, and it's worth paying a visit to this. And if you get a chance to watch a game at these iconic stadiums, I think it's just the icing on the cake. But beyond that, there's Australian wildlife, which is unique to Australia, right?
Yeah.
There's almost 80% of Australian wildlife, which is only found in Australia. So whether it's the kangaroos, the koalas, the echidnas, the emus, the platypus, or the Tasmanian devil, or the quokkas, one of the most the smiling animals in the world. I guess there's so much that Australia has to offer. And lastly, I guess Australia's got this unique, the world's oldest living indigenous culture, which is almost over 60,000 years old. So right from adventure to, if you want to admire some fabulous nature, to wildlife, to sporting encounters, to wildlife encounters, to cultural attractions. There's something there for everyone when you travel to Australia on a holiday. And then you can drive in Australia. You drive on the same side as you drive in India. You've lived there. You've studied there. You drive on the left-hand side of the road. Cars are of right-hand drive variety. So driving is really quite easy. And 80% of Australia's population stay within 50 kilometers from the coast. So it's just a vast open land for you to drive. And with GPS and Google Maps, I think it's just easier for you to navigate all through the countryside of Australia. And that's another reason why somebody should travel to Australia. So just to summarize, I guess this is one country that offers everything for everyone. So if you're planning a next summer holiday, I guess Australia should definitely be on a consideration set.
And, I would like to add that you should travel to Australia in its different seasons also, because sometimes you going there in the winter, Australia is different, and you going there in the summer, Australia is different. And I remember a few years ago, we now all had this tagline where Australia is one place where you can see the sun, the sand, and also the snow, because you have many ski destinations also out there, right? And you gave us enough reasons to visit Australia, and I'm going to pick on each of them. Let's start with your first love and my first love, cricket, because you're so passionate about it. We have heard from you that you have watched the Women's World Cup final at the MCG. You have watched the unfortunate loss we had recently at the Gabba. That was quite a disappointing game for us. You have watched a test at the Adelaide Oval. You have watched a game at the Sydney Cricket Ground also, right? Now, Australia has been, like you said, close to the Indian traveler's heart because of one reason being cricket. There's Bollywood, there's food, and all of those things. But like you rightly said, that people have Australia top of mind, but not enough people have still witnessed Australia, because some may think that, okay, I'll do it later and not do it today. So let's talk about it from a cricket lover's perspective, right? When you go to all of these stadiums, is the experience the same? Or would you say that watching a game at each of these stadiums independently should be on someone's bucket list?
So let me go back to 1985. And I'm not sure whether you were born then, but everyone remembers the Benson and Hedges World Cup that was organized by Australia. And India won that cup, beating Pakistan in the finals. And Ravi Shastri drove his Audi, which was gifted to him as the man of the series on the hallowed turf of the MCG. And that was the moment in 1985 when Indian households had recently got color televisions. Uh, for the first time, one day cricket was transformed to become a day-night game. So cricket was played under floodlights with colored clothing, which was called pajama cricket. And then Kerry Packer from Channel 9 had introduced like hundreds or rather few cameras which actually telecasted live cricket through different angles, which we had never seen
Yeah.
before. And that's where Australia, innovated on cricket. And Australia is such a big sporting nation that watching any sport in Australia is like, it's a money can't buy experience.
Yeah.
And so if you pick the MCG and the majestic MCG with 100,000 capacity, getting in and getting out of the MCG whenever it's packed takes hardly 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so seamless. The facilities there are are absolutely marvelous. I was recently at the Gabba on day one of the Gabba test. It was a test match. 90 overs was supposed to be bowled. There were just 12 overs of game that was played, and we had a picnic right from the morning till the evening, and we just didn't feel like leaving the stadium because there's so much happening.
Yeah.
There's so much entertainment. Food was not a problem. Luckily, also Australia also serves alcohol or beer in the
stadiums,
ground
right?
at the
Yeah.
stadiums as well. So that never went out of stock. There were a lot of people talking and having conversations around cricket. So you build a lot of friendships when you discuss cricket with the Australians as well. And the atmosphere was so lively that we didn't feel like leaving the stadium at all. So whether it's the Adelaide Oval or the Sydney Cricket Ground or the MCG or even the new Perth Stadium, which is
Yeah.
one of the most state-of-the-art stadiums in the world, it is a different experience altogether. I guess the facilities are fantastic. The atmosphere is quite lively, and I can't describe it in words. But it's worth watching a game at these iconic stadiums. And the Indian cricket team will be traveling again in October, November for 5 T20s and 3 ODIs.
Oh, really? I did not know of that.
Cricket
Yeah.
Australia is soon going to announce that particular schedule. So, if you're a cricket lover, you must watch a game at any one of the stadiums.
I totally agree because I have watched a Sri Lanka versus Australia game at the MCG. I've watched an India versus Australia game again at the MCG. I haven't watched a game at any of the other stadiums. But going to the Boxing Day test and watching day one of the Boxing Day test is on my bucket list. And at some point in my life, I will probably do it. All in all, if it comes to events, Australia really knows how to host an event. And I think nothing is better than the Sydney Harbour Bridge and Opera House fireworks display that we see at New Year. So we have had many of our travelers go there for New Year's, and everyone has come back with a super unique-esque experience, and they have lived to tell the tale, I would say, right? Now, another question I had was that often people, especially corporate travelers, think of Australia as a destination where they would like to take their team. But it is often thought of that, would Australia be expensive? Would Australia be something where I can take 100 people and go? And even without finding out, the thought is just brushed aside, and then they choose another destination within close proximity of India. But through the various conversations I have had with you over the years, you always have numbers to tell me where, Neil, 300 people from this company came to Australia, went to Perth, went to Queensland, and had a gala time. So is this just a one-off, or would you say over the last few years, Australia has really developed itself as a destination where anyone who works at a corporate watching this would be like, I should also take my team or my dealers or my friends in a large group to Australia?
Neil, you made reference to this point that Australia knows how to organize world-class events. So whether it's a Taylor Swift Coldplay concert or a Boxing Day test match, or Vivid Sydney, which is the Festival of Lights, which is celebrated in Sydney, or the New Year fireworks, Australia knows how to organize such large-scale events. And when it comes to corporate incentive programs, you really want to offer something to your top achievers that they've never experienced before. So how about playing a game at one of these iconic stadiums? And
wow.
if there are no formal games happening around that time of the year, you can actually have play a game at these iconic stadiums. You can actually have uh, play at the practice nets of the MCG and at the SCG as well, and get a cricketer like a Glenn McGrath or a Brett Lee or Steve Waugh or Adam Gilchrist to join you, and give you advice on
That's pretty
how to play,
awesome. Yeah.
or teach you some of the finer techniques of the game as well. So these are money can't buy experiences. Imagine the judges of MasterChef Australia coming to you and curating a bespoke meal for your customers at the
I had not
MasterChef
thought of
Australia
that.
kitchen
Oh,
in
wow.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
You can do these kind of experiences in Australia, which again money can't buy. Imagine climbing the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and it's called as a climb of your life, and we get a spectacular view of the entire Sydney Harbour, or learning to surf at Bondi or Manly or Surfers Paradise.
Yeah.
There are these unique experiences that only Australia has to offer, and therefore it's becoming one of the most favorite destinations for corporates as well. But to add to it, I guess there are a couple of other things which has made Australia one of the most favorite destinations for Indians, and we spoke about the numbers and the surge that we've seen out of the Indian market. One of the reasons, as we discussed, is the direct flights. The number of direct flights have gone up from 8 to almost 27 direct flights, and now as we speak, there are flights out of Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore flying into Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
And you have multiple one-stop options with Singapore Airlines, Malaysia Airlines, Thai, Cathay Pacific, Vietjet, Vietnam Airlines, Sri Lankan as well. So aviation capacity is not really a problem. And as we speak, we have these campaigns with Singapore Airlines, which is offering some special fares for travel to Australia. So that's the first point. And the second one, and which is kind of a myth, but a lot of people think that getting a visa for travel to Australia is really difficult and it's a tedious process. Not at all. I guess there are three huge advantages that the Australia visa processing system has to offer. One, it's a 100% online process. So sitting at your home or from your office, you can apply for your Australia visa. Two, you do not have to appear for any personal interview. And three, you do not have to appear for any biometrics or submit any biometric data. And the passport remains in your custody at all times. So you do not have to leave your passport with any embassy or immigration department for endless or countless number of days. So it's the most simplest and easiest visa process. You have to scan and upload all your documents. And if you're a well-traveled individual, you get your visas in less than a week or maybe a maximum up to 15 days. So access into Australia, whether it's aviation access or getting a visa for travel to Australia, is really quite easy. And plus, as I said, the fabulous events that we organize with the cricketers and the master chefs adds a bit of that uniqueness to it. So all these elements have helped us to position Australia as a great destination for incentives or a reward and recognition program for corporates.
I think all of the experiences you mentioned, of course, bode well for corporates as well. But if someone wanted to like throw a massive party celebrating, let's say, their 40th birthday or their 50th birthday, or wanted to take their friends, let's say 50 people, 100 people, celebrating their anniversary, they could probably get these experiences as well. And I quite agree that experiences are what define Australia. And every time we have someone planning a customized holiday to Australia, the team is very energetic because they know that every holiday plan is different.
Absolutely.
Someone would just want to do a simple Great Ocean Road, but while someone would want to go to the Great Barrier Reef and do scuba diving, but at the same time would want to do the seaplane or the helicopter ride and see the Great Barrier Reef from above that. We had someone who came to us and said that, I've done multiple trips to Australia. Now I want to really take a car and drive to the northernmost tip of Australia. Because if you stand on the northernmost tip of Australia, where not many people really go because it's very far, you can see the sunrise and the sunset because it's just a tip, and that's crazy. So we have had people who have continuously been going to Australia because if you're well traveled, sometimes you do get a multi-year visa that is there, right?
You get the minimum validity is a 3-year multiple entry product for a tourist, and a 5-year multiple entry product for a business traveler.
Yeah, so it's not just one trip that you can do, right? You can do multiple trips. And given that I spent 4 years there, I try to do a trip every year. And in spite of doing about 12 to 15 trips to Melbourne alone, I still feel I haven't seen Melbourne or the state of Victoria in itself. So that's something that still is on my bucket list. But speaking about this multi-entry visa, I wanted to talk about certain ideas for travelers who have been once to Australia, who have done what a first time traveler definitely does, which is the Penguin Parade, the 12 Apostles, and the Great Ocean Road, have been to the Great Barrier Reef, have been to Gold Coast, have seen the MCG and all of that, right? What are some of the ideas that you would suggest to a second time traveler or a third time traveler that you still feel that the Indian traveler hasn't explored, or you, because you have a lot of data at your hand, right? And you know what is being seen and what is not being seen. So what are some of the ideas? Let's throw them around.
So two things. One, for those who have been to the traditional gateway cities, which
Yeah.
are Sydney, Melbourne, Cairns, and Gold Coast, you've possibly just witnessed and encountered the cities. You haven't gone to the surrounds of each cities.
Correct.
So you can hire a car and drive from Sydney to say Blue Mountains or Hunter Valley or Port Stephens, or right up to Byron Bay as well, and enter the state of Queensland, or drive from Brisbane to Sunshine Coast, which is a beautiful area, which I recently discovered, a place called Noosa. And there's an experience called as a Great Beach Drive, where you drive on the beach for a stretch of almost 60, 70 kilometers.
Wow. Where is that?
It's on
Queens.
Sunshine Coast
Oh,
in the
okay.
state of
Yeah.
Queensland. Or then you can hire a car and drive from Cairns to Port Douglas and Palm Cove and go right up to Daintree as well. So you can explore the surrounds of these cities as well on your next trip. Or you can explore some new states of Australia. For example, you could go to South Australia and go to a place called Kangaroo Island.
Yeah.
Kangaroo Island is almost 7 to 8 times the size of Singapore with a population of 2,000 people.
Wow.
And you can see Australian wildlife like kangaroos and koalas in their natural habitat. Uh, there's this remarkable rocks where the famous Kingfisher calendar was shot with featuring Deepika Padukone long back.
Oh, yeah.
It was shot against these remarkable rocks. So it's a beautiful, pristine, breathtakingly beautiful island that you can visit if you're in South Australia. And plus, South Australia's got this place called Barossa Valley, where some of the best wines of Australia or in the world are manufactured. So you can actually visit this particular place. Then, as I mentioned earlier, Australia's got the world's oldest living indigenous culture, which is almost 60,000 years old. And if you were to experience that, you can visit the Northern Territory or a place called Ayers Rock, where they have this monolith right in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you can visit the Uluru or a helicopter ride. You can take a Segway ride. You can view it over, on the back of a camel.
Yeah.
Experience the local indigenous culture. They have this amazing dot painting, workshop which can be undertaken out there. You can interact with locals. There's this whole 6-7 course dinner under a canopy of stars that you can witness in the middle of nowhere. And you have the indigenous people talking about their history and this whole storytelling about how Australia's formed and the story of the stars and the moon and the sky and everything around that. So it is quite spiritual in that sense. And then you have Canberra. Nobody knows that Canberra is the capital of Australia, and you can actually visit the Parliament of Australia and watch the live proceedings which have been undertaken. You can actually organize events at the Parliament House. You can get married in the Parliament House as well, or have your celebratory event. We can have a lunch or a dinner at the Parliament House as well. And there's this unique place called as the Jamala Wildlife Lodge in Canberra, where Sonakshi Sinha recently went, and we can actually sleep with the lions. You got a glass partition, between you and them. But these are the kind of experiences that you can actually participate in the other parts of Australia as well. And then we've forgotten the state of Tasmania, which has got one of the purest airs on the planet. We know what kind of pollution levels we are witnessing in this part of the world. But if you want to really breathe fresh air, you got to go to Tassie. And everything's absolutely breathtaking out there. It's a natural beauty that literally soaks you in, and it's another beautiful part of Australia that you should visit. And you can actually spend a week just in Tasmania. It's so beautiful.
I guess you've given enough reasons for someone to not visit Australia just a second time, but second, third, fourth, fifth time, right? And I would like to mention that, you mentioned Canberra, and not many people really know about Canberra. But I was talking to someone from Canberra, and she was telling me that Canberra's the only city in the world where you can actually take a hot air balloon and fly over the city, because there aren't many high rises. And every single city kind of gives you some unique thing like this, right? And that's what I guess, makes Australia different to probably any other country in the world. Now, I want to come to like your personal anecdotes, like what Nishant likes about Australia. So, when I reach Melbourne, I really like to go for a brunch because the bread there is great, right? The coffee there is great. So, after so many trips, what are some things that really stand out for you? And I know this is a difficult question for you because you've experienced more than what most of us have. But what are some of the unique things about Australia that you'll only find in Australia and not anywhere else?
That's a pretty interesting question. So let me go state-wise and everything. One particular thing in that state that I really admire and would love to do it.
I think that's a great idea.
Would love to do it every single time I visit. So in the state of Queensland, I would love, I would keep going back to the Great Barrier Reef. It's 1,200 kilometers of pristine natural beauty, uh, and you can actually see thousand shades of blue in the Great Barrier Reef. And I'm sure you would possibly intersperse some pictures of the Great Barrier Reef as we speak.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see these colors anywhere else in the world. So the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland. If you come to New South Wales, again, the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, it might be, people might think, oh, Australia is all about the Opera House and Harbour Bridge, but let me tell you that you can keep going back to those icons, have a nice meal sitting just outside the Opera House, watching the sunrise or sunset against the bridge, and it's just a beautiful experience.
Awesome.
Uh, in Melbourne or Victoria, it has to be the MCG because we are such diehard cricket fans. But another thing that I've recently discovered is the the art of chocolate making in Australia. There are a lot of authentic Australian-made chocolates like the Hakes or Cocoa Black.
Yeah.
Or you got to visit these cafes like the Brunetti, which is in the heart of Melbourne City, or the Koi Desert Bar in Sydney.
Okay.
And one thing that I recently experienced when I went to Canberra was this place called the Anita Gelato Factory.
Okay.
They make some of the best gelatos in the world. And this lady came down from Italy and has started her own, ice cream shop in which is now you find that in Sydney as well as in Melbourne. But she started off in Canberra, and it's one of the best chocolates or the gelatos that I've ever had in Australia. So that's a must visit in Canberra. And in Melbourne, you have the Lune croissants. They make the world's best croissants. So when it comes to desserts, and every Indian's got a sweet tooth, you have to visit these places or visit these chocolate factories or the cafes in those hidden lanes and arcades of Melbourne. So that's another one. In South Australia, as I said, Kangaroo Island, again, breathtaking beauty, natural beauty. You witness Australian wildlife in their natural habitat. You can have breakfast with the koalas and kangaroos out there as well. So that's a beautiful experience. In the north of Australia, the Northern Territory, it's the Ayers Rock. It has got an element of spirituality in it, where you interact with the local custodians, the traditional custodians of the land, who built Australia. So that's the one that I'd love to visit again and again. And there's got this wonderful experience called the Field of Light. And Field of Light is like they have this solar illuminated glass stems in the middle of desert against this rock, and this entire ecosystem is almost close to 7 to 8 football fields, the size of the 7 to 8 football fields, and it lights up at night, and you are in that field under a canopy of stars. So it's just beautiful. In Western Australia, I would love going to Rottnest Island and taking a selfie with the quokka, which you only find on that particular island
And nowhere else.
else in the world.
Yeah.
And every time you try to take a selfie with the quokka, it's got a smile on its face as well. So the quokka selfie has become like a must-do thing whenever you travel to Western Australia. In Tasmania, again, it's a beautiful destination for a self-drive. You can drive from Hobart to a place called Wineglass Bay, to Cradle Mountain, to Launceston. And I did this cruise recently in Strahan, which was, again, a beautiful experience. So you can actually enjoy cruising in Australia as well. You can take a cruise from Sydney to Tangalooma or from Sydney to Tasmania as well. So that's another reason for you to go back to Australia as well. So hopefully I've covered all the states.
I think you have.
Yeah.
Did we miss out Northern Territory?
We covered Ayers Rock. Yeah.
Ayers Rock. So I guess you've given us enough reasons to travel in 2025 also, right? Your next trip is, I'm sure, a work trip there. But if you were to go with family, where would you go next? Because a place that you have not seen after 40 or 50 trips, and something that is still on your bucket list. And because Australia is probably what, the fourth largest country in the world, and you have the Indian Ocean on one side, the Pacific Ocean on the other, you have the cold waters of the Antarctic Ocean in the south. So, like, what is something that you haven't seen yet?
Recently, a group of my friends, and I'd recommended this particular itinerary to them, drove across Australia.
Okay.
And they drove almost 7 to 8,000 kilometers over a 3 week period. So they started off in Melbourne, drove down the Great Ocean Road to Adelaide. From Adelaide, they went up north via Coober Pedy to Ayers Rock or the Red Centre. From there, they drove straight into Cairns. From Cairns
Wow.
to Brisbane via Sunshine Coast. From Brisbane to Sydney via Byron Bay, and from Sydney back to Melbourne. It was an epic drive. And, Australia is 2.5 times the size of India,
Yeah.
with the population of Mumbai or Delhi.
Yeah.
So you really don't find too many people when you're driving in the regions or the surrounds of Australia. And if you drive along the entire coastline of Australia, which is called on the Highway 1, you cover almost like 14,500 kilometers. Well, that's certainly on my bucket list, but I'll have to take a 1 month break, which I don't think I'll be
I
able to
think it would
afford to
take
at any
longer,
kind of time.
Nishant, because I remember Adelaide to Perth is, if you are to drive, it's like a crazy drive that you have to do, and you won't have, for miles and miles, you won't have any
You won't see people
settlements. Yeah,
around
right.
you. Yeah.
I guess that is something that you can do on the train also. I think there's
Yes,
the
the
Indian
Ghan
Pacific.
and,
Yeah.
and the Indian Pacific as well. So yeah, so you can explore Australia by driving around, by taking a luxury train, by flying between cities as well. So there are multiple options to explore this beautiful country.
Yeah, I guess people have started, because of the flight connectivity, people have started visiting Brisbane and Perth for, I guess, a long weekend also, where 4 or 5 nights, and they tick that off. So we have seen that also kind of work. Well, over the last 30 minutes, Nishant, we've spoken a lot about Australia. Do you think we've missed out on anything, or do you want to give our listeners something that you is your tip, your trick, or a suggestion that they should visit Australia at this time in the future?
As I started this conversation, it's a destination that a lot of people want to travel,
Yeah.
but haven't really traveled, or
Yeah.
it's on the bucket list, but not on the to-do list.
Yeah.
And hopefully through this conversation, we've tried to sow that seed in the minds of everyone who's watching us to plan their next trip to Australia, because this is one holiday that leaves something behind. You carry a bit of Australia along with you when you return to India. And what has also happened over the course of uh, past so many years, that both these countries have come much closer.
Yeah.
There are almost 1 million Indians who have called Australia home. So you would know somebody who's based there, your neighbors, your friends, your family members, or somebody who's studying there. So you have reasons to go and meet them, or they have invited you. Possibly you never
Yeah.
accepted the invitation. So this is the
Yeah.
time for you to go and meet them, because Indians today are the largest, one of the biggest communities and fastest growing communities in Australia. And
Yeah.
4% of Australian population is now comprising of Indians who have called Australia home now. So there are a lot of friends and families. It's a great destination for education as well, and they're very, high quality institutions which have gained like international reputation as well. So it's a great destination for education. The trade and investment links between the two countries have strengthened quite a lot. So there's a lot of mining exports that are happening to India, and a lot of garments which have been exported to Australia, and spices that are exported to Australia. So trade has gone up. A lot of Australian seafood, and Australia is
Yeah.
known for that. We haven't spoken about food as
Not
yet.
at all,
So maybe
yeah.
that's another point to talk about, because Australia is a melting pot of different cultures, and
Yeah.
the Australian master chefs or the Master Chef Australia have shown us how diverse the cuisine in Australia is. And you get one of the best produce in Australia because ideal weather conditions, and because it's an island, one of the biggest islands in the world, the seafood that it offers is
What
simply
is your favorite
incredible.
dish?
Oh, well, again, talking about restaurants, this place called Golden Century or Exo
Okay.
Pipis in Sydney.
Okay.
And they serve some of the best seafood. They have this abalone, and
wow.
the crabs are quite majestic,
Yeah.
in size and taste as well. They have this fish called barramundi,
Yes.
which is uniquely Australian as well, which is quite delicious. And yeah, I mean, whether it's crabs, whether it's lobsters, whether it's oysters as well, it is a seafood
Yeah, I think
paradise.
going to Tasmania and driving to an oyster farm is also something that many
Yeah,
people like
you
to
can
do.
have freshly shucked oysters
Yeah,
as well.
and that's also pretty cool. I guess going by our conversation, I started the episode with asking you reasons why to visit Australia, and you started off with a good 10 reasons. But I guess if I were to really sum it up, why should you visit Australia in 2025? One is that India is going to Australia again, so you can go watch the
But that's
ODIs.
in October, November.
Yeah, go before
Go before that and then travel
is
again
what
and
you
watch
would
again.
say. But there is the various experiences that you mentioned, not only for family travelers but for corporate travelers, for honeymoon travelers. There's the food, there's the drink, there's the various road trips that you can do. You could probably go to Byron Bay and see the Hemsworth brothers. That's what people talk about. So I guess every time we meet you on this podcast, right? You give us new reasons to travel to Australia, and I guess that is what Australia really is. That it's not a set of just 10 reasons why everyone should visit. If you're a honeymooner, you'll have something. If you are an adventurer, you'll probably have something. And I really can't wait for my next trip to Australia because it's a country that, well, I have spent 4 years there, so it's got something of me there, and it's left me with something. So, thank you for coming on the episode, and we will have you again in the future. But yeah, like whether you go to Australia for the cricket, for the food, for whatever, keep sharing these stories with us because we look forward to hearing them.
Absolutely, and as we say that you never, switch off in Australia. You always switch on in Australia.
Oh,
So it's a
that's
destination where you participate in various activities, it encounters, interact with the wildlife, with the locals as well, and I guess you carry a bit of Australia back with you every time you return. So
Awesome.
thank you very much for having me on the show, and look forward to having these conversations again.
Thank you so much. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Australia, the land down under. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep celebrating life and keep sending us your feedback about what you like about this podcast. We look forward to hearing it every single time. Bye bye.